So proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting
You know, the average age in this club is probably getting pretty close to 80. We talk about this all the time, and I said the problem with getting old, it takes you an extra half hour to get prepared every day. So what do you mean? Well, by the time you glue your teeth in, put your hearing aids in and adjust them, get out the Band-Aids and strap down all your hammer toes, it takes a good half hour. But anyway, our speaker today, it's really odd how this all came about. I don't know whether we ever had this before. But Rob Ree's wife was our speaker a few weeks ago, and I asked her to bring her husband. And her husband is Rob Ree, and he put 20 years in the Air Force. How much? 33. Wow. So when he got out of the Air Force, he got into counseling, and he works with a lot of veterans and knows the veterans benefit business from front to back. And here's the deal. He doesn't work for the VA, and he can tell you like it is. So let's welcome Rob Ree.
Thank you. Okay, how's that? All right, I'm not used to working with a mic, so I learned a long time ago that when you get up in front of people and you're scared, you have to let them know that you're scared, and then you get on with the business at hand, okay? I'm a little nervous, but I'll get through this. Appreciate it. Again, thank you for having me, and not to correct you, Jerry, but the last name is Ree, R-E-E, just like Lee, only Ree. Yes, sir. Just a little bit about myself, as Jerry pointed out. I'm a 33-year Air Force veteran. I'm currently working at Anchorpoint Counseling Ministry as a therapist, counselor, social worker. I'm also a life member of my VFW Post 402 in Coriopolis. I'm also a member of my American Legion Post 924. That's where I volunteer as a service officer. And I'll get into the difference between a veteran service officer and a service officer in a little while here. I also worked 4 years as a civilian at the 9/11th Air Force Base as the Director of Airmen and Family Readiness, which I helped a lot of folks with looking for benefits and information and referral as well. Can we have the next slide, please? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, what is the VA? Most of us have a preconceived notion that the VA is the hospital system of the VA. But as you can see up here, it's a cabinet-level executive branch of the Department of the Federal Government. It's basically there to provide veterans with different types of benefits, including health and financial type benefits. Next slide, please. There's three basically divisions, administrative divisions of the VA. You have the Veterans Benefits Administration, and as most of us have been in the military, we know that the military likes to make acronyms out of everything. So if you hear me say the VBA, that's the Veterans Benefits Administration, or the VHA, which is the Veterans Health Administration, and then NCA, which is the National Cemetery Administration. And as I pointed out, those three divisions are there, and we're going to break them down and talk about each of them individually here. So the Veterans Benefits Administration, basically, as it states up here, it's providing financial and other types of forms of assistance to veterans and their families. Next slide, please. One of the benefits that they administer is disability. And as the slide points out, it's a tax-free monetary benefit paid to veterans that have service-connected injuries. A service-connected disability is something that you incurred while you were on active duty, meaning that, say you're out and you get in a car accident and you're in the military. That's still considered a service-connected disability. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in war to get that disability. So also here, the benefits, the way they're administered on the financial side, they're talking about increments of 10 to 100%, and I'll get into that a little bit more here as well. Next slide, there we go. Another benefit is called the dependency and indemnity compensation, also another tax-free benefit. And that's paid to surviving spouses. Basically, if an individual was killed, say that car accident, the individual died from it, then there are potential benefits available to the spouse. It's also payable to survivors of veteran who died from their service-connected injury. So say that individual that was in the car accident, he survived it, and then maybe 6 months later he died from that. There may be benefits available to his family from that accident that he had. Excuse me. The next benefit is called special monthly compensation. It's also tax-free. This one's for veterans that, let me see here. So say that person that was in that car accident needed special care afterwards. And what that does is maybe they have to have a nurse come into their home and take care of them, provide special care for them. That would also pay for that monthly compensation. But that's also for like spouses as well. So I kind of kid around about this, but I'm a veteran, obviously, and maybe someday I'm going to need some special care that I can't provide. Maybe my wife would be eligible for some of those benefits to help take care of me. Would you do that for me, honey, if necessary? Okay, next one, please. Education and training. This is the big one that a lot of us are familiar with, or at least we've heard about, and you commonly expressed as the GI Bill, but there's several other programs that are involved with that. Montgomery GI Bill, work study programs, Veterans Education Assistance Program, Yellow Ribbon Program from the GI. All these are programs that there's special requirements that have to take place, and you have to be able to meet these requirements. Special eligibility. They're monthly benefits paid out. I can tell you that I've used the GI Bill myself after I retired. I looked at my wife and I said, wow, I'm retired now. And she said, well, you're not done. What are you going to do? So I said, I'm going to go to Pitt and use my GI benefits here. And the VA actually paid Pitt for me to get my master's in social work. So it's a program that's out there. If the eligibility, you meet the requirements, maybe some of you folks in here might not meet that, but maybe your children do that are there, maybe your grandchildren at least have an idea of that benefit is out there. Next slide. Here's another one that's a really good program, the Home Loan Guarantee Program. Again, there's requirements that have to be met for that, and some of the benefits to that are really there's no down payment required. So maybe you have a young couple. My son, for instance, he's married. He's active duty. I'm pretty sure he used his GI or home loan guarantee when he bought his first house here just recently. And some of those benefits, as I said, there's no down payment required, competitively low interest rates, limited closing costs, which we all know that's a really big thing. A lot of times when you go and buy a home, there's some closing costs that are involved with that. And another one that's a really nice big advantage is that there's no PMI, no private mortgage insurance required. And this is a lifetime benefit. So you can use this over and over. I've used it myself 5 times, which is great. And when we go to retire, honey, if we need to buy a retirement home, we can use it another time there too. Okay. VA pensions. I had no idea that there was a VA pension until Christine's parents actually used this program. And this is, again, there's certain requirements for that. Main big thing with the VA is you have to not have received a dishonorable discharge with a lot of these benefits, a lot of these programs that they have. So that means if you had an other than honorable, my understanding is you can get an honorable, other than honorable, or a dishonorable discharge. So honorable and other than honorable, a lot of these programs you can utilize here. So the VA pension program, I'll talk a little bit about that. It is limited by net worth and income, and the VA will look at it at a case-by-case basis. Let's see here. They'll also look at the net worth of the home or the individual, and they'll also look at the net worth of the spouse too. So, and again, it's a case-by-case basis. You can have some eligibility for that available. And here's some other things too. On the top of there, I'm not going to read all of these, but is there anybody in the room here that was on active duty before September 8th, 1980? Good group here. Okay, so this benefit could potentially be available for you. Again, as Jerry pointed out, I do not work for the VA. I cannot tell you whether you're going to get benefits or not, but I really strongly encourage that if you look at some of this stuff, you may want to talk to somebody, and I'll explain to you how you can talk to somebody and who you should talk to about questioning whether you're eligible for these benefits. But there's some of the requirements that are up there right there. Obviously, it says if you are on active duty before September 8th, 1980, and served at least 90 days on active duty with at least 1 day during wartime. So that was a criteria that Christine's father met. So then the next one was, down at the bottom, and at least one of these true, he was 65 years old, so he was able to pull a pension. And this pension helped him when Christine's mom and dad were put into a memory care facility. It paid them probably about $1,400 a month, which really helped offset the cost in their home. So I encourage folks to look into that. Yes, ma'am. So
he was enlisted in 1944.
You have a quick question back there? Not sure on that. Some benefits from the VA are and some aren't. I know disability payments are not. Those are all tax-free. So he was 65. He was able to, right, he was over 65, thank you. And he was able to take advantage of that benefit. It really helped out. Sir? I'm pretty sure there are. So, because they're going to look at your net worth, as the previous slide mentioned. So definitely, and as I said, it's a case-by-case basis. The VA, they'll work with you the best they can, but they have criteria that they have to say, no, we have to follow this or follow that. Okay, so after Christine's dad had passed away, her mom was still able to utilize that benefit. So the spouse was, in that case, was able to. She had to reapply, and the amount that was dispersed was decreased because there was only one person that it was being taken for now. Okay, next slide, please. And that's where we go into the VA survivor pension. That's what her mom was taking advantage of. And it's pretty much the same type of criteria there. I'm not going to read all those statements there, but it's the same thing. There it is, September 7th, 1980, and served at least 90 days, in which case that's what her father did. And I really like it. We were talking about this the other night. 70 years later, he came back and he was able to utilize this benefit. We had no idea. And as I said, I'm still learning about the VA. It's really tough sometimes to navigate because there are so many things that we don't know about. And I'm still learning about it. Next slide, please. Okay, the next segment is basically on the VA Health Administration. And as you can see, there's over almost 1,300 healthcare facilities and 171 medical facilities and 1,112 outpatients. So what that means is that almost 1,300 healthcare facilities, that would include hospitals and outpatient facilities. So that's how they're wording that. So that 171 medical centers are like the hospitals, like what's downtown in Oakland. The outpatient centers, I personally have been utilizing the VA healthcare system for about 12 years now. I personally don't like to go downtown to Oakland. I kind of call that the mothership, and I try to stay away from that because of a lot of the traffic and stuff like that, for one thing. But I utilize an outpatient facility in Rochester, and I'm not plugging for those folks, but I've been with them for about 12 years now. They're really great. Basic eligibility. Again, dates are important. If you can see there, if you enlisted after September 7th, 1980, or entered active duty after October 16th, you must have served 24 continuous months or the full period for which you were called to active duty, unless the description. So, as I said, it's complicated navigating because there's so many different variations and so many different cases. It's where you were, how old you are, how much money do you make, so many different things, and then there's so many different benefits that you could possibly take advantage of here. So again, there's some criteria. The minimum duty requirement may not apply if these are true. Were you discharged for a disability that was caused or made worse by your active duty service? So those are issues that all have to be taken into account as well. Next slide, please. Priority groups. And again, let's complicate it up. It's not black and white that you just go into the VA and say, okay, I have VA eligibility health care now. The VA says, all right, maybe you have that eligibility, but we have priority groups. And they have 8 different priority groups, the first one being the highest, meaning they get priority first. So if a person has a disability rating of 50% or more, they're going to be in priority group 1. And here's some other ways that they break it down. So they look and say, what's your military service history, and what your disability rating and your income level, whether or not you qualify for Medicare. So all those factors are all played in to what's going to place you in what priority group to get your medical benefits. Veterans with service-connected disabilities receive the highest priority. Veterans who earn a higher income who don't have any service-connected disabilities, qualifying them for disability compensation, receive the lowest priority. So again, 1 through 8, 1 is the highest. And I'm not going to get into all the different levels on what they are, but I do say that if you do have a disability and it's 50% or more, most of the time you're going to be in priority group 1. So what that means is if I call up, and I'm in priority group 1, if I call up and say, I need to come in and see my doc, they're going to do everything they can to get me in that day if they can. Now, I'm already listed in there as priority 1. If they come back and they say, well, we're going to lower you down to priority 5, I may not get that call that same day. I may not get in there. It might be a couple of weeks down the road. Okay, there we go. Some of the other programs that Veteran Health offers here. The VA has gotten more in tune with a lot of things that are going on with our military members today. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, that has been recognized through the VA quite a bit lately. I know, I like to tell folks, I say, they didn't invent PTSD until after Vietnam. That doesn't mean that folks that were in Vietnam aren't eligible for PTSD benefits or anything like that. So the VA is looking at a lot of programs right now to help veterans get through this stuff. They're also looking at homeless, women issues, minority, LGBTQ. What the heck is that? Does anybody know what that means? What's the plus? I just learned what the plus was. So what I found was, you're correct, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and that plus is for another Q. It's for questioning. So a lot of young people are questioning their sexuality, so the VA is looking at that now. And at one point, I read this a couple years ago that there are a lot of transgenders in the military, and the military is looking and saying, all right, well, how can we work with you on that? So the military just doesn't look and say, everything's black and white, or the VA. The VA is now looking at this. So someone with PTSD could be a homeless woman, they could be a minority, they could fall into that LGBTQ group as well. So the VA has to really take a look at all that, because one, if you served and you're eligible for these benefits, the VA is really taking a look and saying, we need to take care of these folks as well. Also, there's some adaptive sports and special events that the VA has on occasion, and the VA also has outreach events. So one of the programs that Christine and I went to a couple years ago was Operation Stand Down, and that's once a year. A lot of organizations will put this out there, and it's a resource event for veterans. And the one that we went to was in downtown Pittsburgh at Stage AE. And what they did was they opened this up for folks to come in to support veterans on any type of organization that you can think of, anything from Veterans Leadership Program to Wounded Warrior, and the VA was there as well. So that was one of their outreach programs, and they were able to get folks enrolled into the VA healthcare system. So sometimes you might be able to see an outreach program going on like that, and I encourage you to attend those. They're free, and they're giving you services and basically a lot of information that you might not get otherwise. Okay, next slide, please. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so as Christine said, the percentage rating. So disability, when I'm talking about that, and I talk about the percentage rating, someone is rated with a service-connected disability. Does everybody understand what that means? Everybody? If you don't, please raise your hand, I'll get into that. So service-connected disability, so someone may have been in the service, and I'll use myself as an example. I was a jet engine mechanic for a number of years. So I went into the VA and I found out that I had some hearing loss. And I also had tinnitus. So the VA right now currently is awarding a 10% disability rating for tinnitus. Now, the VA, what they do is they'll rate in increments of 10% or more all the way up to 100% maxing out. So what that means is once a month, I get a disability check for whatever it is for my 10% for my disability, for my tinnitus. Now, they won't pay for hearing loss unless it's completely gone. So what they do, instead of the hearing loss, they would provide hearing aids. So there's still a compensation. So there's several ways you can be compensated with the VA. Financially, or with hearing aids or back braces or anything you need, medications, things like that. But I like to think and say that there's also a third way to be compensated, and that's called validation. And I went through this myself, where I went to the VA and I told them I had a disability, and they said, yes, you have a disability, but it's not service-connected. So it was up to me to prove that it was service-connected. It took 3 years, but I was able to prove that I had this disability, and they said yes, and they awarded it. That's the validation. To me, that's just as important as the financial end of it, or the back braces or the hearing aids or anything else like that. Because you go and you know what happened, you know you got hurt, and you know it's service-connected, but the VA a lot of times will just say, deny. So it's up to you, if they deny something and you feel very strongly about it, to continue on with that process and appeal it. So, and you have 1 year. So the next part of that is your disability ratings, maybe PTSD, for instance. That's 30, 50, 70, and 100%. And the VA will have to go through there, and they'll have mental health evaluators, and they will say, all right, yes, we're going to award you 50%. So that's a higher end. Is everybody following me on that? Any questions? Okay, so the other part of that is you can take these, say maybe someone has 50% for one thing and 50% for another. Our math tells us that adds up to 100%, right? Somebody's laughing. They know what I'm talking about. What do you call that? We call it, there it is, right there. A lot of the fellow veterans that I work with and stuff like that, well, they're shaking their heads going, that's VA math. So 50 and 50 doesn't equal 100. I can tell you because I've gone through these charts enough, and I know that 50 and 50 equals 70. So, because the big clincher of that is 100%, if you're rated at 100%, that's like a different set of benefits that you get. There's a lot of different things that go along with that. So the VA is holding on to those purse strings real tight. They don't want to just give everybody 100% disability rating. So my ratings right now, I'm not kidding you. I've got back issues and all kind of things going on. I'm at 190% total. But what does that actually equate to in VA math? 90%. All the things that I have listed are 190% when you do regular real math. But when you go in and do the VA math, sorry, you're at 90%. So Christine brought up a good point. I was working with a young man, Iraq veteran. His name's Jordan. And I knew just by talking with him that he had seen some things and been some places, and he had been exposed to some horrific things. He was an Army veteran, and we talked one day, and I said, have you been to the VA? He says, yeah, I go to the VA. He says, well, are you rated for any disabilities? He says, well, no. So we encouraged him to go in and talk with some people in the VA, talk with some medical providers, and a couple months later, he pulled me aside and he said, Mr. Ree, he called me Shirt because he was in the Army and I was a first sergeant. So if anybody been in the Army or the Air Force, Army, you know what a first sergeant does? Okay, so I did that in the Air Force. So he found that out. He still, if I see him today, he'll still call me first sergeant. So he says, First Sergeant, look at my phone. I said, well, what's that? It's like $34,000. I says, what's that from? He says, it's in my bank account. I said, well, wait a minute. So we went over to the computer. Long story short, the VA, he put a claim in. We encouraged him to go put a claim in. He put the claim in. The VA awarded him $34,000 for back pay for his disabilities, and he was rated at 80%. He's looking at the computer because we went into the system. We were able to see what happened there. And I says, yeah, you're rated at 80% now. Isn't that great? This young guy started crying. He says, you have no idea what this is going to do to help my family. We're going to be able to buy a house. We're going to be able to get out of that rat's nest that we're living in. He said, this is a good thing for me. Thank you. Well, it wasn't, I didn't do it. I just encouraged him. I said, there, you got to go look over there. So you may have benefits that are there that you're not aware of. And I'm not telling you to go look, but I'm telling you to go look. Because there might be things there. We had no idea about Christine's parents. It was a blessing. It really was. Okay. Okay, the third portion of the VA, as I said, the three sections. We had the VBA, the VHA, now we're talking about the National Cemetery Administration. As you can see, they're saying that there are 155 national cemeteries in 42 states and Puerto Rico, as well as 34 soldier lots and monuments. So I think we all know what a national cemetery is. I didn't realize this until a few years ago. There's what's called soldier lots. And those are in regular cemeteries, but they're sections that are put aside just for veterans. Not all cemeteries have those. So in Pennsylvania, for instance, we have 4 national cemeteries. National Cemetery of the Alleghenies, which is in Bridgeville. I'm sure some of us are aware of that. Indiantown Gap National Cemetery, which is in Annville, PA. And we have 2 of these cemeteries that are close to the Philly area, the Washington Crossing National Cemetery and the Philadelphia National Cemetery. And in Pittsburgh, we have what's called the Allegheny Cemetery. And in that, we have a soldier's lot in there. And the reason I'm bringing this up, because it's real important to distinguish between the two, the Allegheny Cemetery and the National Cemetery of the Alleghenies. Those are 2 separate cemeteries. I was fortunate enough to work one summer at the National Cemetery of the Alleghenies. It was a part-time position. I'm sorry, it was a full-time temporary position. That's the only time I've ever worked for the VA. So probably about 4 months. So I learned a lot about the cemetery systems, which I was very proud and very honored to be able to do the job that I did. So some of the things that I did there is I worked with families. I worked with funeral directors in the honor guard system. to help make these folks, help these families with the passing of their loved one and giving a really respectful and honored internment into the cemeteries. Sir.
If somebody realizes that they have a benefit point, they're worried that the asset will be too high. If that family formed a family trust, and put everybody in the family in the trust and own the trust, would they consider that income, or would they not be able to touch that because it's owned by other than the previous?
You know, that's a really good question. I would check with an estate planner on that, you know, get an attorney in there to make sure that that is sheltered the way you're talking about it, because that is a big concern. We build up our estates, and we want to make sure that our families get, is that what you're getting at, Jerry?
Well, that eliminates a lot of people thinking if they save, look like all the save some money, that they're going to lose that money or lose the benefit.
Mm-hmm.
But prior to going to the VA, if they knew where the cutoff was, I think a trust would eliminate that as being, it's like if a family forms a trust and they owe money, and the husband and wife and the kids are in the trust, the nursing home cannot go against that trust because that person that was in the nursing home does not own that solely. It's owned by other people. I can't see why that wouldn't work.
You know, it very well could. Yes, ma'am.
I can tell you that we went through our mom and dad. Their home ownership would have been screwed up. Disqualified them. I won't tell you what we do from an attorney or a tax advisor, but that wasn't the reason my mom and dad
For a lot of people, but here's the problem. A lot of old people try to transfer the deed of their property to their children. That doesn't work because it's a 5-year look back. But a trust kicks in right away.
Exactly. That's why I would defer that. But it's a good question, and I don't blame you for wanting to protect what you've built up over the years. Christine's family was amazing. When this happened, the siblings all got together, and they said, this is what we believe, and the cooperation was fantastic. So if you have people, your family members, that will work with you, that's probably the best way to do it. And I don't see why you couldn't use a trust. I think that's a really good idea. I would definitely talk with some investment attorneys or investment people like that and keep that going. Again, I cannot emphasize how much importance it is to have cooperation in the family. Not to air dirty laundry. My family's a mess. I was so proud to watch what her brothers and sisters did, how they all came together. So maybe communicate that with your children and see and the rest of your family to see how they can put together with that. And explore that trust. I definitely encourage that. So, as I said about the cemetery here, now let's talk about eligibility real quick. Obviously, you need to be a veteran. Okay, one of these must be true. The person qualifying for burial benefits is a veteran who did not receive a dishonorable discharge. There we go again with a dishonorable discharge. Or the person qualifying for burial benefits is a service member who died while on active duty for training, or inactive duty. Basically, so that individual that I talked about earlier that was in the car accident, if he was on active duty, he'd be eligible to be buried in the National Cemetery. The person qualifying for benefits is the spouse or minor child of the veteran. So I'm thinking I'm eligible to be buried in the National Cemetery of the Alleghenies. So is my wife. Now, if she passes on before me, she could still be buried there before me, if you want to. Has anybody been to the National Cemetery of the Alleghenies? Okay, it's a beautiful place. It's well maintained. I'm proud every time I go in there. It's fantastic. Also, a dependent child. So maybe there's a child that has special needs and has to be taken care of and lives with the veteran, over 18. If that child is still being cared for and can't take care of themselves, that child can be buried in the National Cemetery as well, as long as one of the parents was a veteran. George, okay. Sir? Good question. So Arlington, sir? The Old Guard. Very good question. So the Arlington is not one of the national cemeteries. As this gentleman pointed out back here, it's run by what's called the Old Guard, which is the Army. Okay, so a lot of times when I was working there at the cemetery, folks would come in there because they'd be a little bit older maybe, and they're thinking about getting their affairs in order and stuff like that. And they, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm going to take my discharge papers, my 214. I'm going to go down and I'm going to talk to this National Cemetery folks and see what about eligibility there and see what it's going to take and stuff like that. Well, in the cemetery, a lot of volunteers work there. Great people. A lot of them are retired. We had one gentleman by the name of George. George was great. He was Air Force, not just because he was Air Force, but he got in there and it was like a job to him, but he loved it. He has so much passion for it. And we would get folks, like I said, from time to time, would just drive on in, come into the office, and when George would see someone come in, he would jump up and he'd go over to the counter. And he would generally start off, "Sir, how can I help you?" He said, "Here, I've got all my discharge papers. I want to see what it's going to be that I need to get all my stuff taken care of, and I want to be buried here." And George would so calmly look at this individual and say, "Sir, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not eligible to be buried here." And the guy would get all flabbergasted. He said, "Well, why?" And George would say, "Because you're still alive." George loved that bit. Oh, he was something else. And there was a lot of deadpan humor that was down there at the cemetery, too. You had to keep the stuff going on there. Okay, George he's probably still down there. Okay, so applying for benefits. Now, if you'll notice, when my name was put up there, I'm listed as a service officer. And if you look here, it says a VSO, a veteran service officer is what that is. Now, a veteran service officer is somebody who has gone through the training to help veterans apply for benefits. And a lot of these people that work in these positions are full-time employees. And I'll use the American Legion. Okay, I'm a volunteer Legion officer. I'm not in a paid position. But the American Legion in the federal building downtown has paid employees that will sit there with you and talk to you about what you need to do to apply for these benefits. My job as a service officer is to help you with pointing you in the directions, looking for information and referral. I'm not in a paid position. I volunteer and I say, all right, what are you looking for? If I can help you, I'll help you, point you in the right direction. These folks are going to help actually sit down with you, fill out the proper paperwork to apply for these benefits. And as we said, these benefits are for medical benefits as well as the financial side of things. Okay, next slide, please. Now, here's some of the Veteran Service Officers organizations. As I said, the American Legion is up there, the American Red Cross, AMVETS. That's a really good organization, American Veterans. DAV. I've heard from several veterans that they really enjoyed working with the folks from the DAV. The other thing I want to mention, too, is when you sit down with a veteran service officer like that and you're not connecting with them, you don't have to stay with them. Try to find someone that you really connect with if you feel like they're a champion for you. I had an organization a couple of years ago. I have sleep apnea. The VA tells me it's not service-connected. So when I was working with this one VSO, he said, well, you were in the reserves, and they don't like to look at people that were in the reserves. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, you're coming out and you're judging me. You don't work for the VA. The VA is going to make that determination whether I have a service-connected disability that's sleep apnea. But he had it in his mind that, hey, so basically I fired him. I just said, okay, and I went ahead and I found another organization that I work with and I have been working with. And I don't want to say anything other than the fact that these are all good organizations. The individual that I was working with, I didn't I didn't connect with. So I said, I'm going to work with somebody else. I've been working with a gentleman right now for quite a few years. He's a champion as far as I'm concerned. He's looking at what I need, and he's taking care of me. He's saying, Rob, you need to get this form here still filled out. So that's really good. So the Marine Corps League is up there, Military Officers Association. Military Order of the Purple Heart, I'm not sure if they're still operating in that capacity. There's Paralyzed Veterans America. Some VFW posts have veteran service officers assigned with them as well. Veterans of Vietnam War and the Wounded Warrior Project, that's a big one as well. They're downtown. You can probably go in and talk with them as well. I highly recommend, if you have questions about your benefits, reach out to one of these organizations locally. Have a talk with somebody. Maybe you can do it over the phone. Maybe you could do it over a Zoom meeting or whatever. Maybe you can go into their offices. Some of them are opening up now. Sit down there and talk with them. Have your discharge papers ready. Any other documentation you have. A lot of times when you do make a health claim to the VA, they're going to want to know what your military medical records are. So if you have your medical records, that's a big benefit, because it's going to help streamline the process. The VA is going to look, like with me, they said, oh, yeah, we can see that you were a jet engine mechanic. They're not going to argue the fact that I have hearing loss. You stand out there in a jet, listen to them all day. Sir? Not since Congressman Murphy steps aside. No, I'm kidding on that. That's generally where a lot of people go, is to their congressman. And a lot of times a congressman can turn up that wick. I don't know if a senator can, not a state senator. It's got to be somebody in a federal capacity a lot of times. But that's one area that I would say, yes, something will sit there. It took 3 years. I've got a friend, he was in the Navy. He was a helicopter pilot, had a hard landing, messed up both of his legs. It took him about almost 8 years before they finally come back. Now, that's terrible. Yes. Now, if you're over 65, you can ask to have that expedited. You can ask. So that's a benefit there that a lot of people don't know about that. So if you do have a claim in there and it's sitting there, have your VSO talk with them and say, hey, I'm over 65. A lot of times they'll expedite them. That age number is a big thing right there. That's a good question, though, sir. So patience is a big thing. If you're over 65, take advantage of that. Next one. Okay, I'm going to open it up for more questions. Sir? Yeah.
And a lot of people feel that you have something to VA. I just want to tell you the fact that you are aware of the truth. That's totally incorrect. I've met veterans who have come in from a fire to some other groups because they say the truth is so much over there. I think that is due to the fact that the so close to the surgery is a medical truth. And what happens is you're treated initially by first, second, or third year veterans who the supervisor who is over them. So they'll maybe install judges or whatever and treatment plan, but they have to clear it with the supervisor for your treatment. I need to tell you that from the guy that treats your journey, the surgeon, the voice from you, please do the such step. It's always stir this, stir that. You are non-number, you are definitely. Another thing you might point out about the cemetery of the Allegheny is that first Wednesday, you're aware that first Wednesday
That's right. Thank you for that. I want to say real quickly, I'm not here to bash the VA. Someone asked me earlier about what my experience has been. The VA system, to me, it's been kind of a love-hate relationship, and I'm going to do a little self-disclosure here. There's certain parts of the VA I will not use, and I will not use their mental health in any way. I would go outside and use that. Now, if somebody has the fortunate experience where it's good, then by all means, and I'm happy to hear that you've had great experiences. They are true professionals down there at the mothership. I kid around about that. You are right. I will not do anything with the mental health side of there. I just don't agree with what they do. And what I've learned about in the profession that I'm in right now, which I'm a social worker, that emphasizes that I will not use that system at all. But again, I go there for my eyewear, my back braces, and the folks at Rochester, the clinic up there, they're the best as far as I'm concerned. But I do have to go downtown to the mothership on occasion, and it's been nothing but professional. We had another question over there, sir? I don't know that answer. That's a good question. I really don't know that answer. And you know what? I'm going to be doing some research on that now. I know I had to, my father was a World War II veteran, and he passed a number of years ago, and I wanted to collect his medals. So I reached out to them, and they had to go, because everybody knows there was a huge fire in St. Louis, and that's where all the medical records were lost and burned and stuff like that. So they've gone and reconstructed these, and now if you need your records, you go through nationalarchives.org. And I did that to get my father's records, and they were kind enough that they sent me all his awards and decorations. And it was really, really nice. About 6 months, again, when we're dealing with the government. So that's a potential. That's another area it doesn't have anything to do with the VA. But if you want your ribbons and awards and decorations and stuff like that, I encourage you to go to nationalarchives.org and submit that request in, and be patient. Again, it was about 6 months. Good question, though. Any questions, sir? I'm not too sure on that. You were shaking your head. What do you think about that? I'm sure he's right. He's right on that. The way, and that would be another presentation as far as how the VA rates all their disabilities and such like that. That I mean, as far as what their ratings are, because as I mentioned, for PTSD, you can be rated at 10%, 30%, 50%, and that it all depends on how it affects your way of life. So I have back issues. So what they do is they say, we're going to check your ROM, your range of motion. So I'll go in, and the other thing too is when you go in for these, they call them a DBQ, disability questionnaire, you'll go in and see a doctor either at the VA or now they're contracting. They're doing a lot of contracting out with companies. So I had to go in and get examined, and one of the examinations was they had to check my range of motion. And that's where it's real important that you're really forthright and you let them know that if you're having pain, like she said, I need to know as soon as you start to bend where your pain is, and that's how they judge you. So the range of motion, they give it out in degrees, for instance. They'll say, if you can bend so far before you have pain, then, and that's how they rate that. So if I'm bending and it's 15% up, well, that's a 30% or 50% rating for your VA disability. So there's all this math and charts and everything like that. It can be overwhelming. And that's another reason why I strongly recommend that you work with a VSO. Yes. Very good. Thank you, Ken. If you go to a VSO and they want to charge you, walk out. This is a free service. Any of these organizations that we had listed here, they will not charge you. And if they do, now there are organizations out there that you'll see them all the time. They'll say, we'll help you get your VA claim, or we'll help you get it increased and stuff like that. And you read the fine print. Yeah, there may be an attorney there or something like that, and you think, that's great. I fell for that early on. And I realized that no, because they don't do anything. At least my experience, the attorney that I had, oh no, you don't have to pay us anything. They'll get their money once I get mine, and they'll get theirs before I get mine. So I stepped away from that, and I encourage people, Ken, you're absolutely right. It's a free service. We served our country. We shouldn't have to pay for something like that. It's just a real challenge to navigate, like I said, through these. Any other questions? I will say one thing, too, is that I kind of look at going to the VA as an experience like when I was deployed. Everybody's deployment is their own. Everybody's experience at the VA is their own, too. And it's not cookie cutter. You can have two individuals go through 20 years of military service, experience the same thing, have the same MOSs or careers, go through everything like that, experience whatever, the same. They can go to the VA. One can get 100% disability rating. The other one can get nothing. There's a lot of variables there. Let me get this gentleman first. Sir?
Also, you go outside doctors
Right, they're expanding that a lot more. He's right. Basically, he's saying that if you have to drive a certain distance, the VA may say, well, we'll go ahead and let you go to a different doctor that's not in the VA system. Good point. Thank you. Ken's absolutely right on that. If you're in a situation, even if you're in the VA healthcare system, get that emergency relief that you need right away. You're right. And that 72-hour window, if I remember right, you're right on the spot with that. Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. Yes. Okay. Any other questions? So Christine has a question, or yeah, I want to say thank you for having me. I have business cards. If there's something that I can answer for you, I strongly recommend that you stay connected with your families and friends and relatives to make sure that they're aware if you're a veteran. And like Ken's saying, just make folks aware of things like that, hey, if emergency pops up, get me into a center, then get me over to the VA within that 72-hour window. All right. Hey, one more time. Any last questions? Okay. Thank you very much, folks.